If Boston College wants to win the Red Bandana Game and defeat Michigan State, they're going to have to win in the trenches.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Now, yesterday we previewed the start of the Red Bandana week for Boston College football. We talked about Welles Crowther and that whole story and the history of the game. Today, let's talk a little bit more about Michigan State. We're going to look at three big areas I think that are worth talking about in this game. We're going to talk about trenches and how that's going to be critical for Boston College to win. We're going to look at punting versus going for it. And then we're going to give some injury updates from Tuesday's practice. We'll get into all of that on today's show. Now, let's get into the trenches. For that, what we're talking about, offensive line, defensive line. Against Missouri, it was disappointing. Missouri clearly outclassed Boston College in the trenches, both offensively and defensively. As I mentioned earlier this week, the run game for Missouri was predicated by the fact that BC was just getting their butt kicked by their offensive line. They're getting pushed off the ball. They just could not get any push going. Now, to be fair, Missouri has one of the best offensive lines, I think, on BC's schedule. Similar to their defensive line, a lot of talent on that team. So going into this game, you have to look at this as an area that BC is going to have to win. And let's start with the offensive side of the ball. BC became a very one-dimensional team against Missouri because they could not run the ball. They ran the ball for an average of less than 2 yards per carry. Thomas Castellanos was bottled up, and he had to throw the ball, which, to his credit, other than the 2 interceptions, looked pretty good. That being said, you know that Will Lawing and Bill O'Brien, they want to run the ball again. Against Michigan State is one of the top 30 rushing defenses in the country. They did a pretty good job in their one FBS game against Maryland, holding them to, I believe, less than 100 rushing yards. But they've only played 3 games, and 2 of their games kind of really don't count. They played FAU and Prairie A&M, who I don't even know who that is. If you were to tell me who Prairie A&M is, without cheating, tell me who their mascot is, because I don't have a clue. So, you know, 2/3 of their schedule has been kind of cupcakes. So it's hard to say that they're going to be dominant against the pass, the rushing against the run. But to be fair, it's hard to say that we don't know what they're going to do. Boston College needs to be dominant again. They need to control the clock, and I think Michigan State, looks like a perfect team for BC to regain that physicality up front and dominate and end up with a win. Michigan State does not have the talent that Mizzou has. That's an objective fact. They have a good coach in Jonathan Smith, and they're going to probably go some places with him. They're just in a rebuild year, and BC got lucky and they landed them on their schedule a little early. So when I look at what BC can do, Kai Robichaux and Trayshawn Ward were basically invisible against Missouri. They just could not get them involved. I mean, Robichaux himself really just was not much of anything, and you saw a little bit more with Ward because he had a little bit of speed to kind of to balance off against Missouri's rushing defense. Michigan State, I believe BC should be able to run the ball against. They're going to be at home. I think it's also critical to mention that it's a night game where it's going to be cooler and it's not going to have the humidity and grossness that you got at Mizzou. I mean, Mitch was there, Mitch Wolf, who was on our show earlier this week, and said it was 80 plus in Missouri. You wear yourself down as the game goes on. This is not going to be that case. They can stay fresh. I think that's going to be super important. Now, the defensive side of the ball is an area I think in the trenches BC has a very good chance of exploiting and doing some things against Michigan State. Now, Michigan State against Maryland. This is the one game I'm going to use as a a a thermometer of what they could be like. Their offensive pass blocking grade on Pro Football Focus against Maryland, who they beat. They beat them 27-24. Their pass blocking grade was a 24.7. That, folks, would have put them right into the stratosphere of what BC got in the 2022 season when their offensive line was a disaster. You read up a little bit about Michigan State on any other blog, you can see that this has been an issue. They haven't had to face much. You know, their grade against Prairie A&M was a 91.0 for pass block, and against FAU it was 80.8. But again, Maryland, 15 pass rushes. Hurries. 3 sacks. So that offensive line is against a Power 5 team was not very good. And BC's defensive line, a group that definitely needs to rebound after last weekend, this will be the perfect opportunity for a Donovan Azaraku or Neto Ekpala to step up. Now, Azaraku had a good game against Mizzou. There's a potential he could be a game changer against Michigan State. This is a guy that has, as I was talking to Mitch again, he's putting together stats through 3 to 4 games where he's going to start lapping his statistics from last year because he's having such a big year. This is a perfect opportunity for BC's defense to get aggressive and do some things. They're playing against a quarterback, Aiden Childs, who has been pretty, I don't want to say mediocre, but he's young. He hasn't had a chance to really play all that much. He's only completing 56% of his passes, and he has a 4 touchdown to 4 interception ratio. Against Maryland, Childs had 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. So and 2 interceptions against Florida Atlantic. This is a quarterback you can get at. This is a quarterback that you can rattle. He's mobile-ish, but he's not like super mobile. I think he's rushed for 38 yards on the season. This is the perfect opportunity for defense to get right. This is the perfect chance for Boston College's defense after a tough week to get an opponent in front of them that they can dominate, and I think they can. You look at the odds and the spread at 6.5 points. Vegas is never very kind to BC. I mean, they were 17-point underdogs against Missouri last week. The fact that they have him almost as a touchdown favorite says volumes of what they see BC versus Michigan State. I look at that and I add in all of the intangibles of the Red Bandana game. And this to me strikes me as a game Boston College can go out there and lead and potentially just take over very quickly. In a moment, I'm going to look at one area that I am concerned about, and I'll explain why in just a moment. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on Locked On Boston College because it's the #1 sports book in America. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sports book. They've got bonuses. They've got boosts. The boosts, man. Check them out. Every day you can go in. If you're thinking of making a bet, find the boost because those make your wins even more sweet. And you can only get those right now on FanDuel. So go visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sports book. I love going to sports, concerts, theater, you name it. A chance to go out and see live entertainment is the key to my life. And Game Time has become a key for me as well. They now have a new feature called Game Time Picks that make getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. All you got to do, go find the game that you want. It'll show you your game time pick, so you can find the tickets that you need. Use the seat locator so you know where you're going to sit, and see if you can find some all-in pricing so you don't have to worry about extra fees when you buy your tickets. I use Game Time to get BC tickets. I think you'll enjoy it too because it's so easy to use and it saves you time and money. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you all who have listened and have subscribed to our channel on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoy this, make sure you check out some of our older episodes as well. I think you'll enjoy what you hear. Now, last week highlighted a problem that has been marked something that's been going on for BC now for 3 games, and that has to do with punting. I don't know what's going on with this punting because I've watched enough practices to know that this team can punt. But when it gets to game time, no matter who the punter is, they have been freezing up and shanking things. Every single game, we have seen a shank. From that Florida State game where they shanked one at the beginning of the game. They had 6 punts in that game, so the average is all kind of evened out. But against Duquesne, they had a punt and averaged only 29.5 yards per punt because of that issue. And then against Missouri, they changed punters, so they finally sit down Sam Candotti after 2 shanks. They bring in Sam Stone and Ivan Shevchenko, and Sam Stone shanks one. This is a major problem and something Bill O'Brien had to address. He said at today's press conference on Tuesday that they have 4 or 5 guys on there that can punt the ball, and they need to figure out who can do the punting. Clearly, Sam Candotti is not going to be the answer for now. Last week, I don't even think he was available. They just went otherwise. Sam Stone was a well thought of recruit. He's only I think he's a redshirt freshman at this point who can kick and punt. I've watched him at camp. He's not bad. Ivan Shevchenko is like 6'6" and has the biggest leg I've ever like he's just big. But there was another name that I noticed at practice the other day, and I'm wondering if he might be someone we might see, is Liam Connor, the kicker. I believe when I was watching practice, I think it was him that was also punting as well. So you have all these different guys that can punt. But it just seems like it reminds me of kicking during those like 2014, 2015 seasons where they just couldn't do any place kicking. It's just, it seems like a major problem. And I'm not sure if they're going to be able to just fix it. You have to. But Bill O'Brien brought up something during Tuesday as well that I thought was like, you know what? I kind of dig this, and I think, and I'll explain why. He said if they can't figure it out, they're just going to stop punting, and they're just going to keep going for it. And, I'm sure that's a little bit of hyperbole. If you're pinned back at your 20-yard line, you're punting it. You're not going to go for it. But he said when he was at Penn State, they had this issue, and they were one second or third in the country in going for it on 4th down. You know what team was second or third in the country and going on a 4th down last year? Boston College. And say what you will about Jeff Hafley. The one thing that I loved about his coaching style last year was his aggressiveness for going at it on 4th. When it's 4th and manageable, and you have a quarterback like Thomas Castellanos and an offensive line that can bulldoze if you need them to, you should go for it more often than not. And Jeff Hafley did that last year, and I was appreciative of that because we've had so many coaches like Steve Adazio who had punted on the opposing 37-yard line for, net gains of like 15 yards or whatever the heck he used to do. You now have a coach that would do that. And I was not sure if Bill O'Brien would do that. I think there was a game, I want to say it was against Florida State, where he punted already from like the 42-yard line, and it was one of those net 20-yard punts. If he decides that this punting is not going to work, it makes total sense to start going for it more often on 4th down. You have the offensive line again. You have the quarterback that can do some things either through the air or with his legs. I think it's a gamble, especially in college, worth taking. So if that's what's going to happen, if you can't punt the ball and you're going to kick it off the side of your foot every second or third punt, like BC has been doing, then scrap it. Don't even bother. Only do it when you have to and go for it more often than not. And I would love to see it because that made last year's team a little bit more unpredictable, a little bit more fun. And I think it would get your offense into positions where they could score more points. And their offensive efficiency has been pretty good up until this point. So I think if that's the case, forget the punters. Figure it out. And then you got to figure out in the offseason what's going on with Matt Turn. What is going on with these punters? Because it has not been good. So in our final segment, I want to give you some quick injury updates. What's going on with the Eagles and a big injury that came up on against Missouri. What's the status? I'll give you all of that in just a moment. Hey, Boston College fans, have you heard about ROY? It stands for Return on You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As you all know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. ROY changes the game for fans. It directly supports players. ROY allows fans to directly back their favorite college athletes. With ROY, fans can play a key role in shaping the future of their favorite teams, while athletes maximize their name, image, and likeness potential. You can engage with athletes on their NIL journey. By using ROY, fans not only support athletes financially, but also become part of their name, image, likeness journey, helping them succeed both on and off the field. So download ROY for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Just visit Roy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get the Roy app for iOS or Android and start making an impact on your favorite team. Use referral code Locked On for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROY. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. I want to shout out all my Eagles nesters out there. You guys have all joined my subtext. If you want to join and get direct access to me and support the podcast, sign-ups in the show notes. I hope you check that out. And when you're done with this, check out Locked On ACC. They're doing their ACC squad show. I believe it comes out later this week. Unfortunately, I'm never part of it because they always record when I'm putting my kids to bed, and that's the only time that works for them, and I can't get out of that. So enjoy their takes on it. I'm sure they're all going to be really hard on BC, but you all know where you need to be if you want to get realistic conversations about Boston College. And that's here on Locked On BC. So on Tuesday, Boston College held their press conference for the week for the Red Bandana Game. Got to talk to Bill. We got to hear from Bill O'Brien and some updates on injuries. And I want to shout out Kevin Stone, who of Rivals, who put this out, that Jude Bowry, offensive tackle, who left the game against Missouri, was back practicing with team. And I think everywhere, if you heard that big, it felt like a wind blow. That was Boston College Nation exhaling, because Jude Bowry is an absolutely critical component of future success for this team. BC is thin at tackle, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of where the drop it would take if Jude Bowry left, if he was out injured. And so when I watched him leave and I saw Bill O'Brien's mouth word, I believe he said a word that would make my grandmother blush, I thought, this is not good. But the fact that he's back and practicing, that is a huge sigh of relief. Now, hopefully Jude can stay healthy because he's been injured quite a bit. But it's big that he's coming back. And again, when we talk about battling in the trenches for Boston College, the fact that you have Bowry back, you have both of your tackles, you have your whole offensive line ready, that's a huge shot in the arm for Boston College. That's a huge shot in the arm for the rest of the season if they can stay healthy. The other injury update, and one that I thought was really interesting and one I just did not expect to happen, was that linebacker Jaylen Blackwell is back at practice. Now, he played a bunch last year before he got hurt. It sounds like Bill said it was an Achilles injury, which are terrible. But it's going to take a while. So don't, if you heard about him coming back, it sounds like it's going to be a couple weeks before he'd be ready to go. Like he's doing like limited practices right now. But that's a nice boost at the linebacker position when you get, especially when you get midway through the season, when people start to get hurt. And Craig Fitzgerald, credit to the strength and conditioning coach, has done a good job of keeping this team healthy. But to get a reinforcement back like that, and you'll probably get more out of Bryce Steele at that point, that's a big plus for BC. So Blackwell is a good one to get back. And one again, I didn't expect. It sounded like from what I heard that he might not be back this year. So you're getting him back. That's a bonus in itself. And as I said in last week's episode, Grayson James is back on the 2 deep. You get your backup quarterback back, and BC is healthy, and that's good. And I'm not going to talk more about that because I don't want to jinx anything. Now, on tomorrow's show, we're going to continue our preparation for the game against Michigan State. We'll have more conversation. On Friday, we'll have Mitch Wolf on to give our preview and prediction for the Red Bandana Game. I will be in the press box on Saturday night, and I'll be recording a live episode after the game ends and the press conference is over. So check out Locked On Boston to make sure you get that postcast as well. This is AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and check out my work on Eagle Insider, where I do a lot of my written work. You're going to want to make sure you subscribe over there as well. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.